Well, good morning. I want to welcome you all to this Distinction Series 30-minute online event. It is the day before Thanksgiving when this is being broadcast and recorded, and for many people, a very busy day. So I appreciate you all taking some time here and joining us. What we're going to be looking at today is a very interesting distinction. And tool versus rule. Now, distinctions are interesting because a distinction, once you get it, you have it. So if I say light, you say dark. If I say east, you say west. If I say alive, you say dead. So, black, white, up, down. They're distinctions. This or that. This one's a little more shaded. Tool versus rule. But I think once you get this distinction, here's how it's going to help you. So let me just kind of go through some of the outcomes today. Here's what I would expect you to walk away with if you fully engage today. Perhaps you work with teams and you want more participation. If you get this distinction in your teamwork, you will definitely increase the participation. The context of rules. Most people don't really like rules. Getting people to enjoy and use rules with a smile on their face is something that you can gain from this morning. If you're looking for improvement in your own life or in your organization's life, if you're looking for change, if you're looking for learning, if you're looking for creating, if you're looking for solving, this distinction, it's a mindset distinction. When you go into these dynamics with this new distinction, all of those things will increase. So I think this is a very powerful distinction. It's just a little more subtle than some of the other ones that we talk about on our series. So let me just move ahead here to some rules. I find it interesting that we're talking about tools versus rule, and you might think we're putting rules in a negative context. Not at all. In fact, what we're going to show you at the end of this presentation is when you use rules as a tool, they can be very, very helpful and useful. So we've got some rules of the game this morning to help you get the most out of this today. And they're agreements. The first thing you want to agree to here is, I'm going to own this today. What does it mean to own it? I'm not going to be a negative Nelly or a Davy Downer, as they talk to me. When people talk to me and say you're being kind of down, you're going to have an open mind, an ownership mentality. I'm going to get everything I can from this. I'm going to get from this instead of just get through this. I'm going to be fully engaged for this 30 minutes or so. I'm going to own the situation this morning. Secondly, that means I'm going to participate 100%. You're giving up 30 minutes of your life here, at least your attention. Set aside everything else right now. Just get a clear space in front of you, maybe a pen and a paper if you want to take some notes if you're a note taker, and really engage for this short time. You'll get the most out of this. Third, and this one probably is the parent of this distinction, dropping the I know. If you hear something that really bristles you a bit or comes against your set mindset or the way you're thinking, I am encouraging you to adopt this rule. Agree to set that aside and just be curious today. I always say when you come to one of these meetings, you don't have to leave with anything. You can leave it all here if you don't like it. But for the purpose of the meeting, be open to it. Don't have a lot of knowledge about this. come in with the idea of being a little child that just is learning and open. And if you do all that, we'll have some fun. I try to keep it kind of light because I think when people are in a light, fun mindset, they tend to learn more. They tend to be more open to change, and they communicate more, and they're more open, which is what we're after here. So let's jump into the material. Tool versus rule. We'll start with some definitions, and you'll see in a moment, if you'll hang in here with me, you'll see in a moment how this all comes together. But let's just walk with me one small, tiny step at a time, and let's look at some definitions. The first one is, what is a rule? Well, dictionary definition: one of a set of explicit regulations governing conduct with a particular sphere. So, you play the game of chess, there are certain rules that dominate that game. How each piece moves, how the board is set up, who can move when, how you win the game. All that comes into rules. I say when you drive a car, how fast you can go, there's a rule about that, and if you're in Hanging Rock, it's accurate. That if you're not local or regional here, you might not understand that, but that's where most of the highway patrol hang out, especially on holidays. We've got a holiday week here. You know that speed limit that is posted, which is a rule, is actually accurate in that area. So, what is a rule? It's the non-negotiable regulation of how we do things. And it governs how we do business or how we do life, even if you have life rules. So that's a sphere of thinking, that's a mindset, and it's a helpful mindset, but we're making a distinction between that mindset and the one of a tool mindset. So let's talk about what a tool is. A tool is just a device or an implement that you use to accomplish something, to carry out a particular function. Tools are often used to get leverage. You've got a little shovel, you've got a little rake, you've got garden. Those are what tools are. If you've got business, you have a copier, you have a computer. It's something that you usually hold in your hand or that you work with that gets something done. Pen and paper is a tool. And you're thinking, this is just ridiculous, Dave. I don't see anything here yet that's helpful. Hold on. Coming in to a learning environment with a tool mindset is different than coming in with a rule mindset. If we come in with a tool mindset, we're just looking for things that we can try and use to do a better job. If we come in with a rule mindset, we're looking to be compliant with what exists, the structure that is in front of us. So that's two different ways of thinking. Stay with me. Let's answer these questions using that distinction. And here it is. What do you listen for when you're in a conversation or a discussion with someone? So we're going to use this distinction in the context of communication right now. When you're listening to someone, you're in a meeting and different people are speaking. You're leading a group in a speech or something, and then you have a Q&A and people are giving you questions or they're offering their advice or their opinion. You have an issue and people freely start to offer, here's what you should do. They start to give you advice, start to really be a little bit judgmental and directive and tell you where you're doing things wrong. This could even apply to listening to somebody who's a difficult person. But what do you listen for? In other words, what is your mindset? Well, if you have a rule mindset when you're listening, you're going to listen for compliance. is this person speaking within the design framework that we've laid out, the rules that we've laid out? You're wanting to get clarity about whether they're compliant in over the line or within the boundaries. Are they out of the boundaries, or are they in boundaries? A rule mindset, you go in with a judge's mentality. I'm trying to determine, is this person right or are they wrong? Right versus wrong. That's a rule mindset. I need to just figure out what's right and see if everybody's doing that. It's very binary. It's yes, they're correct. No, they're not correct. And we're looking for what is it that we need to obey? What is it that we need to follow? A rule mindset is a bit passive. It's just understanding the rule and doing it. There's nothing wrong with that. And we'll talk about a context where that's a helpful tool. But I'm going to propose to you that if you have employees, if you have a team, even if you have a team of one and you're working with your own mindset, and you come in with a rule mindset, you're going to be very limited. You're going to be very constricted. There's not going to be a whole lot of participation. You dictate if you're the rule giver or the rule enforcer, and people follow. That's about it. So, what do you listen for in a conversation and discussion? When you take on a tool mindset, a tool concept, you are coming in curious. You're coming in looking for new thought, new thinking. You're coming in looking for potential solutions to problems that you haven't seen before. You're being very pragmatic at this point. What will work here? And how can we improve, and what can we improve? So frankly, when you come in with a tool mindset, you're challenging the status quo, maybe even the rules that have been set, and you're trying to think about how to change those or how to approach the situation, not just by looking for compliance to rules, but you're listening to other people and to new ideas with new thinking. Potential solutions that are different, change that may make things better. If you're a rule mindset, you're just looking for what is and trying to stay in line with it. Two different ways of listening. And then we're going to ask the question, how do you talk? What do you say? It's your turn to speak, or you're the leader, or you're the facilitator, or you're going in a round robin and now it's your time to say something. If you speak from a rule mindset, you're going to dictate. Here's the rule. Here are the things that we need to comply with. Perhaps you've got some authority. We're going to police noncompliance. If somebody is out of line with the rule, you're going to call them out. You are simply restating, dare I say, regurgitating the absolutes and the policy. So give that some thought. I come into a conversation, and if I come with a rule mindset, I'm reading rules, I'm reading laws, I'm reading policy, and I am calling people out or questioning whether we're in compliance with what we've said we're going to do or we're not. That is not wrong. That is a rule mindset. And what it does to teams is it often limits the conversation. People ask me quite often, Dave, why can't I get my people to offer their ideas and thoughts? Why is my team, or why even myself, am I not so creative? This could very well be some insight into why. When you're in a compliance, prefrontal cortex judgment, that you're just looking for what's right and wrong and where things lie, That is a limited, constricted way of thinking. It's not a wrong way to think, it's limited. So a tool mindset, how you're going to talk and speak and communicate, you're going to open the discussion with people. You're going to explore possibilities that perhaps haven't been considered before. You're going to invite others to offer their observation, their thought, and you're going to respect that and welcome it. But Dave, what if they're talking outside of the rules? We're setting aside a safe space to do that. We're setting aside a safe space to explore that. We're not throwing the rules out the door. In fact, our group, or we may not have the ability to change the rule, but what we're doing is we're thinking outside the box, as they say. We're thinking creatively, and we're encouraging even people who are outliers and talk kind of crazy almost. We're going to respect everyone and listen to them. And I'm going to speak and ask questions that stimulate that kind of conversation. And then as I talk, I'm going to respect people and reflect what they're saying and try to understand it, not shut it down because it's outside of the rules. You can even do that to yourself. You refuse to think away from the familiar or what you already know. That's that I know. I'm encouraging you, if you want to create, if you want to progress, if you want to get better, if you want to solve problems, it is good to know how to turn off the rules in your head and just look at tools. Look at different things you can pick up and use to accomplish. It's a shift. It's a mind shift. Let's look at the leadership lesson that comes out of this distinction. Shifting from rule to tool will increase participation, learning, and growth. Again, why do people hire coaches for themselves or for their organizations? They're trying to increase something. They're trying to grow something. They're trying to change something or someone. They're trying to have something that's better. Well, to do that, you have to sometimes set aside existing rules and use some tools to start to build and create an experiment with something different. And a coach gives you permission in that conversation and in your headspace to do that. A leader can either lead from a rule perspective and they're more of a policeman, or from a tool perspective where they're building something with other people. Maybe that helps you understand that. What does this tool mindset versus rule mindset, how does it feel? How does it show up? It demonstrates a respect for other people's thinking. We don't cut people off or judge people or shove them to the side because they're talking different than us. They're talking different from the past. How often have you heard it? Well, we've never done it that way before. Therefore, we're not going to consider any change like that. Why would we want to try something different? A tool mindset is, maybe I could pick that up and use it and it might work better. Can we experiment with that and test and measure it? Just so much here that if you get it, like you get up and down and left and right and light and dark and tool versus rule, if you get that distinction and that mindset, it will open your thought process and your practice to possibility. It invites, a tool mindset invites transparent participation. What do I mean by transparent participation? People are willing to open up. They're thinking differently than everybody else. How welcomed are they in that group to express their opinion? In a tool mindset, we're just looking through the toolkit. Maybe there's some tools in there we've never used before, we've never thought of. Maybe this person has some experience that they can offer that's different than what we've done. And if we have a tool mindset, we're just trying to build something better, or we're trying to create a solution to a problem. So we Encourage people to be transparent and ask the stupid question. That is what I am as a coach. I ask stupid questions. I ask ignorant questions. I ask questions that don't have the context of your past. Now, I learn people's past and businesses' past, and that can be helpful. But somebody coming in with a brand new perspective, like a new employee or a new person in a job, what tools do they bring? Not what rules are they violating? How do they come from a place that didn't follow our rules? That's not where we're at. We're not looking for compliance. We're looking for innovation. We're looking for curiosity. We're looking for possibility. And it invites a transparent participation of everyone to offer their thoughts. It also increases the creativity because of that. It stimulates ingenuity and it enhances problem solving. You know, to benefit from other people's ideas and opinions, you first have to hear them. And if a person doesn't feel safe to offer it, you're not going to hear that idea or that thought. Can we consider things before we make a decision? Can we look at another angle in another way before we basically construct it, set it down, and have a plan and go with it? That is the question here. A rule mindset would say we just need to look at the construct that's in place and be sure we stay within it. A tool mindset says, what can we learn that's new or different than our previous thinking? That's as an individual as well as a team. What a coach does is asks a question that causes a person to think differently, to just take a different perspective. So we need to talk about this last point because it brings this all into balance and harmony. When are rules useful tools? In other words, do we just throw all the rules out the door? We don't have any rules. We don't have any constraints. We just want to be free. And I think there's some advertisement out there about no rules. I'm absolutely not in favor of that at all. I'm interested in a few strong rules. And within that context, we're free to explore a lot of different content. What does that mean? Well, rules are useful tools if we're going to have core values. And I absolutely believe that culture in an organization and even in a person's life is defined by the values that they embrace. And I call them non-negotiables. These are things that we're not going to go outside this boundary. What are your limitations, self-set limitations and boundaries? Or perhaps values that you've adopted or accepted? That's a question for every organizational leader. What is absolutely out of bounds? The second thing that we look at there is we need to communicate these non-negotiables. So a rule is a way to do that. We can create an explicit regulation that governs conduct within a particular sphere. That can be useful. If you have an employee manual of 195 pages, your employees are not going to go look up everything to find out what they're supposed to do or not do. But if you have 4 or 5 or even 3 core values, non-negotiables that are clearly communicated and understood, that sets your culture. Finally, what is the use of a rule mindset versus a tool mindset? Once we come to a plan and what we're going to execute for a period of time, we form agreements and accountability with people. Another common statement I get when I come into new organizations, Dave, we lack accountability. Well, do you just have expectations of everybody, or do you have communicated non-negotiables and agreements with people? Maybe one of your culture statements should be something around integrity. It says we do what we say we're going to do. That becomes a rule, in a sense, a governing limitation that says if I say it, it will happen. That's what an agreement is. I think we need less agreement in organizations, not more, because agreements need to be special. They need to be things that are absolute. They need to be things that we do absolutely. They need to be a rule. Outside of that, we need tools to come up with different ideas and different approaches. The two can work together, and I think it's determining when does a rule become a useful tool. Now, this is a lot of language. It's a lot of talk. I've probably given you a headache this morning by challenging your thinking. But I would love to have a conversation with each of you about this concept and what you've learned if this has intrigued you. And so that's why I do these offers. First, if you just want that slide and maybe a short article or two that kind of talks about this, just email me and I'll send that to you. Second, there's a lot more on the website, my website, that just a lot of programs like this that address this issue in a number of ways. And finally, and that's the website address. Finally, if you want to have a conversation to help you understand this distinction better for yourself and maybe provide some examples and applications, and you want to be able to make that shift. Dave, I want to go in, I'm a leader, I'm a manager, or I'm even just struggling with some thoughts and plans myself. I want to clearly see the distinction between tool and rule and how that can help me. I'm just going to say that's what coaches are for. That's what I do, is I help people through a conversation and through questions to get really clear so they can see other things that they don't see, and what they do see can be clarified and put some distinction around it so that it's useful. You know, if you're muddled and you're foggy and you're not in contact with yourself or your thoughts or your team, you're in a team and you're not sure what's going on, a good conversation with an outsider can really help you clarify things. So I welcome you to email me, Dave Beam at MentorDaveBeam.com, to set up a conversation. So that is our presentation this morning. I've got a couple of minutes before 9, so you can start to work on the Thanksgiving dinner or whatever else you've got planned today. And I would love to hear from all of you just to hear was this helpful today. So with that, we're going to sign off and have a happy Thanksgiving.